Welcome to Film It Now. I'm your host, John Green, and today I'm joined by
Diego Chi.
who is one of my oldest friends. Diego, it's so great to have you here today.
It's good to be here, John. Thanks for having me.
Tell everyone just a little bit about yourself. What do you do? You're a musician.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I play bass in a band called Making Movies. We've been in a band together for 10 years. We're an American band. Or we like to say we play American music as long as you remember it's a hemisphere. Because I was born in Panama and ended up moving to the States as a kid. So a lot of the music has influences that you'll find in Latin America. But it also turns out that those influences that were in the Caribbean are also what influenced American rock and roll, American blues, jazz. Like basically, the music tells a different story.
Yeah.
And so we lean into that. I've been a musician for most of my life. I started playing when I was 8 years old. And
8?
Yeah, 8.
Really? I thought it was earlier.
Yeah. Now I'm here living in LA and still pushing along the band. We have a nonprofit that we started, so I spend a lot of time working and empowering young people in Kansas City to kind of raise up the next generation and encourage them to share their voice and make the music of the next generation of American music.
Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about kind of is your nonprofit. And you guys recently just put out a documentary of sorts, which I had the pleasure of doing a little bit of work on with you. And it's a great look at American music. But tell us a little bit about this documentary, what it was, how you guys put it together. Because you did this during COVID.
Yeah.
And you did it pretty dang fast.
Yeah. So the whole project came together. I mean, it's a partnership between Artist Mentorship, the nonprofit that Making Movies started, and the band. And the goal is to tell American stories. So it's called Americana, like spelling Americana with a K. It kind of forces you to pronounce it with the Spanish pronunciation.
Yes.
Which means of the Americas. Americana means anything that's of the Americas.
Okay.
So the concept was to be able to highlight stories of American music and contributions that are sometimes left by the wayside or maybe just not highlighted enough, in my opinion. So we spent a lot of time in Memphis interviewing a lot of the amazing Black artists that were there, like Cedric Burnside, who's a hill country blues artist, and his father was the one who began that whole movement. We interviewed the Al Green's organist, Reverend Hodges. Yeah. He played on every hit record of Al Green.
Really?
We interviewed Billy Mitchell. Boo Mitchell, who's Willie Mitchell's son. He recorded all those Al Green records. It was an incredible statement and kind of helped contextualize a lot of this American music that, to me, everything you hear in today's day and age is Black music.
Yeah.
And so putting that in context with these people sharing that story, sharing their experience at the time, it helps us to inform and find a way to show this to that next generation of young songwriters. And then also it included the opportunity, we wanted to also be a platform for young songwriters. So we connected these artists with other artists in our network, and they did collaborative music. They did music collaborations virtually in COVID. So all of it was designed, in this crazy time where everybody's home. So you can collaborate virtually. We were able to do some socially distanced filming of each of these individual artists in Memphis. And then the students could collaborate from home. That's
pretty dope.
Yeah, it all came together in like 2 months, which is crazy.
Wow, that's awesome. So when you guys were filming in Memphis, how did you approach did you have friends down there that you knew, film crews? How did you get the film crews? How small were these crews? Like kind of how did you work around COVID when you were filming?
Well, it was a really trim crew. We basically had 2 camera operators.
Okay.
I think the whole project ended up having four different camera operators, but Mac, to limit number of people, my brother and Juan Carlos, who was in the band, they would be the 2 of them 6 feet apart from the person they're interviewing or the group of people. Sometimes there was the Barnes family; they were all together, and that way they could maintain social distance. The camera crew was a team of a couple different Memphis camera operators, but then they would be kind of quarterbacked by an LA director here named William Stribling, who helped cast some of the vision and aesthetic that then would tie it all together.
Yeah.
So he was video conferencing in to give the notes while they would then.
So that's pretty cool. I worked on one project that way where I videoed in while they were on set, and I was like kind of producing it from there, and that's not easy to do.
No, it's all a challenge.
Directing talent over a live stream.
Yeah, it's not the best, not the ideal way to do things.
Yeah,
but I think that speaks to the amount of love that people had for the project. And the message that ended up being at the center point, which is just to highlight these contributions of Black, Latino, Indigenous people in America. That sometimes that stuff gets just put under by the wayside. We had Deborah Gleese Barnes, who's a Raylette, and she told us about her experience in Memphis. But Ray Charles himself was very opposed to Elvis, who we think of as an American music icon, because he basically said, he's like, Elvis just stole our music, and he's not even giving it credit. He's not saying where he got it from. So, not to rub any Elvis fans wrong out there, you can still be an incredible artist. But the realities of our history is that sometimes it erases the contributions of people of color in this country. And so Americana was able to highlight those people.
Wow. That's really cool. I still can't believe how quickly you guys put together a documentary.
Yeah, me neither. I mean,
because it's a good length. It's what, 40? When you take out, so you guys live streamed the documentary. There's 4 pieces to it, but I just put together last week just the chunks that you edited into one bit, and I wanted to say it was about an hour.
It's about an hour of content. It's what's incredible. I mean, and that's cutting down.
That's cutting out a lot. I mean, I've shot documentaries before, and you end up with so much footage when you're doing these interviews that just getting it down to that hour is difficult. Yeah,
we basically sat down with every artist and talked to them for about an hour, and so cutting that down to the 5-10 minutes. It was a challenge because so many of them have had such a wide range of experiences that, I think for having stepped back from it, what we want to do now is go back and flesh out the narratives of each individual artist, since we have enough to talk about each one of them individually.
Yeah, I mean,
so that would be a future iteration.
You could easily do an Americana episode on each person that you interviewed.
Yeah,
that's be pretty dope.
That's the goal, and right now, so all of that is living right now on Americana.tv.
Okay.
And so
is the documentary is that live now on there?
No, we're still going to rebroadcast that and partner with some folks. But basically, the live stream just lived the one time.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at doing a rebroadcast in early 2021
Sweet.
To show that whole story. But that's also part of why in the interim, I want to even if we highlight clips or something like that, to just keep putting that message out there, even if it's in breadcrumbs until we do the broadcast one more time.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm excited to see what you guys come up with in the future.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears a little bit. So let's go back into music. I think it was it earlier this year? I asked you to be a composer for my latest short film. That's the first film that you've done any music for. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I've done some scoring work I've done scoring work for commercials. Okay. So, like
ads.
Advertising. The song needs something that sounds bluesy or it sounds electro or something.
And was that mostly for like local Kansas City places?
Yes. Yeah. So it became, exactly. Local Kansas City companies that would need a little scoring work for their ad.
Yeah.
And I had done music for a podcast as well. But this was the first time that I was able to score for a film, which, I mean, it's ironic because I play in a band called Making Movies.
But you don't make movies. Well, you guys just did.
But we just
made a documentary.
That's true.
Which is pretty dope.
It's we're living out our namesake for the first time, really. But for me, it's always been a dream to score for film.
Yeah.
And so, it was really fun. I mean, and I'd never done a comedy before either. So that was also really an interesting challenge to feel the music be part of the punchline.
Yeah. I think it worked great because you know me so well that I mean I assume, but you tell me what your experience was like. But you watch it and you're like, oh, I see John in this directing, and I know exactly the kind of music he would want for this.
Yeah, I had a few. I mean, part of it's that, yeah, I know a lot of your influences and
Hmm.
frame of references, things that we've grown up with,
Yeah,
from watching like Ron Howard stuff to um, Monty Python to like just
yeah,
understanding then the way that those people use music as
hmm,
as part of the punchline or to underscore
yeah,
a joke. For me, it was fun to put myself in that
yeah.
headspace and to let it happen.
It was fun on my end because I remember I only asked you for I think 3 sections,
Mhm.
but you ended up doing all these little motifs throughout, and you like would punch up a joke with just a little bit. And I remember going through thinking, oh, he did more than I asked him to. And as I watched and listened to each piece, I was like, oh, this is great. Like I didn't even realize that this could use that little musical bit right there, and it ended up I think enhancing
Oh,
the whole
good. Well,
film
I'm glad.
altogether,
I'm glad it
which
worked
is
out.
great.
Yeah, it's fun. It was fun for me. It was like I said, it's a unique.
Is that something you think you would want to do more of in the future?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think music and film. They sometimes when I'm watching a film,
Hmm.
I feel like it's communicating to me visually the way music also communicates to me,
Hmm.
and then I mean that in terms of uh, film can be a very emotive, visceral experience. It
Yeah.
uses a lot of visual cues to make you feel a certain way,
Hmm.
and I think music is doing the same thing. We're both in an emotional um, space,
Yeah.
translating emotion
Hmm.
into different things to try to connect with people. So
Yeah.
I think that I mean there's a reason why film scoring is such a huge industry,
Hmm.
but it's that they go hand in hand. They really enhance
Yeah.
one enhances the other.
I think sound in general, a lot of people don't realize how much it enhances the overall piece. I was editing a short yesterday. I've been working on this web series, and it's an action sequence. So it's these guys fighting on a boat, and as I'm watching it without music, without sound, it looks and sounds like the cheesiest thing in the world. But the moment you add that dramatic music and you add some large sound effects, it really breathes life into a piece. And I think a lot of people take for granted how much sound and music plays a
Totally,
role in film.
totally. I think that it's really just one of the most universal aspects of humanity
Hmm.
is to experience a sound
Yeah.
and to have a visceral reaction to that sound.
Hmm.
My explorations into music have led me down a journey that makes me see more of the universal aspects of humanity, because there are, whether you're talking about the specific notes or chord progressions, there are just certain, for lack of a better word, formulas that just play into the human psychology. The body responds a certain kind of way,
Yeah.
and I think that music has then great potential to heal
Hmm.
people. It can be used for um, as a way to, even if it's just the psychology of reminding us that we're all so similar,
Yeah.
and highlighting how similar we are. But to even just the literal, there's something that like almost feels like it gets made right in your brain when you
Hmm.
experience good music, or when
Yeah.
you experience music with other people, or the trance of a powerful rhythm, or the emotive note of a violinist or a singer.
Hmm.
There's something that is very difficult to describe with words, but that we all respond to and acknowledge.
Yeah.
And so that power, I think, is what translates. No matter what the medium is, you can't escape needing to hear it.
Hmm. So, what have been the most impactful movies or scores for you that have influenced your art, your music?
I believe. Let's see. My favorite film composer, who also makes a lot of music in his own right, just
Hmm.
separate from the films that he scores, is Ryuichi Sakamoto.
Hmm.
And I think that he is an incredible. He's a Japanese composer. He has this beautiful way of using emotive tones that suspend you, and also like it's incredible. His My favorite things about him is that he can do both elements very well. Both the super sparse, you're only hearing maybe one instrument, a lone piano,
Hmm.
or maybe a trio of instruments, but it's still very like the nakedness of each instrument is very present,
Yeah.
to also doing electronic, even like wall of sound type compositions where it's just like there's this sea of synthetic sounds, synths and rhythms and maybe samples or something that he heard the other day, that the raindrop outside, and that's in there somewhere. You hear the sound
Yeah.
of rain or something, and it's this like incredibly layered recording.
Yeah.
And he does both of those things incredibly well.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite thing about him. So when I make music for a band, making movies, I pull a lot from that philosophy of like, you either want to highlight the nakedness of something,
Yeah.
or you want to lean into the textures that are available to you to kind of, I call it ear candy.
Yeah.
And you can fill out a song with a lot of ear candy that makes someone want to keep coming back to it.
That makes a lot of sense now that I'm like thinking about some of the things that you do when I've seen you play live. Like some of those like really ethereal vocal things that you add in. Is that kind of where you get that influence from?
Yeah. So I have this thing I call the D-Synth, which basically stands for the Diego synthesizer, because it's not any one thing. It's a mishmash of my voice. It all centers around me manipulating my voice through a series of guitar pedals, and so which guitar pedals are on, or a loop station. All of those, I use all of them to create the sounds of the D-Synth.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's not even pedals on. It's just the way that I'm singing, but it can be part of a texture, like you're saying. That's is
pretty cool.
I do pull a lot from that. I was very influenced by composers, and then also I feel like there was a lot of artists. Well, Peter Gabriel is a huge influence on me too, and his vocal stylings, and he does that a lot too. Uses the voice as a texture, not just as a he's an incredible lead singer, but he'll use it as something that almost sounds like a haunting violin that comes in over the music, and it's him singing and not an instrument.
That's really cool. So what's next for you in the music space?
Well, making movies right now is wrapping up making a new album.
Okay. So
we'll release that album in 2021, and I just got done going to a virtual music conference that's normally held in Guadalajara, Mexico.
Okay.
But obviously because of COVID, they transferred it to being a virtual conference. And it's like, this is the moment for our band. We're doing all this work. I feel like our work in the United States is very clearly defined as showcasing the diverse DNA, the richness that exists here in the United States, the music of the United States, which is, we wouldn't have been able to form the band and make the sound that we make if we didn't have this influence, or even just the freedom that happens when being an artist in the United States.
Yeah.
You can pull from anything. But also, it feels like, our music, we sing in English and Spanish. This album, just the songs that we ended up picking ended up being an all Spanish album. And so it's like we're aiming that album at Latin America. So I was there to kind of plant the seeds and lay the groundwork, because next year we're going to spend a lot of our time. I mean, this year was supposed to be the year where we were going to already do that, spend a lot of time in Latin America.
Yeah.
But because of COVID, nobody went anywhere.
Yeah.
But next year is sizing up to be that, and we'll have this album in hand.
Yeah.
Where as before it was going to be like preliminary to then return.
Yeah.
Now we'll be arriving with this album in hand. I think
that'd be
that's
cool.
Be really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That almost might end up being better for you.
You
never know.
Can't change the game now, so might as well. I assume it's all for a reason. So here we are.
So I know you have plans, like you said, to do some more editing with the content that you guys got from Americana. Do you have plans to do more of that type of stuff in the future as well?
Absolutely. I think Americana TV is a channel, a portal that can keep telling this story. And there's we scratched the surface of it. I mean, we went to Memphis, and of what we did in Memphis, we're only tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
There's so many of those narratives, whether you're talking about New Orleans, New York City, Miami, LA. Like, there's so many music scenes and music communities in the United States that have this element, even our hometown of Kansas City. There's so much in this big pot of soup that we can pull out and kind of be able to share a different perspective on that American music history. That I feel like this this project has legs for a really long time. We're already in talks with other partners to keep producing content, but
Okay.
in the meantime, it will be expanding on what we've already filmed to be
Yeah.
able to showcase each one of those guests a little more, but
Mm-hmm.
also to do a full rebroadcast in early 2021.
Sweet.
Yeah,
That's
so-
exciting.
Yeah, it's great stuff. We're about to wrap up our year for artist mentorship as well. Just we've had in COVID we've had a virtual program where students can meet up. It's called the Rebel Song Academy Live.
Mhm.
Students meet up and get the chance to network with artists, producers, music industry professionals in order to help them learn, ask
Yeah.
questions, meet, and connect with people who can help these artists develop their career.
Yeah.
And that way we're trying to give as much access to the students, especially. I mean, we want to highlight Kansas City, but even within Kansas City, give access to students who would normally not have that level of access. I mean, Kansas City
yeah.
right now doesn't have a music industry.
Yeah.
There, it has a music scene, it has a wonderful art scene, and a music community of people that support and love the art that's made
Mhm.
there. But it doesn't have any outside. It doesn't have record labels really that are based there that
Mhm.
have national notoriety. It doesn't have any nationally renowned recording studios
Yeah.
or any like publicity firms or anything like that. The music industry aspect is pretty much devoid of any representation in Kansas City. And so this is our way to bring that to the community, but also give access for students who wouldn't normally have those kind of resources,
Mhm.
be able to have them have a studio that they can record and be able to have an artist they can partner with or
Yeah.
be mentored by that they would have never, had any knowledge of or even access to in the neighborhoods that they grew up in.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really dope. All right, I have one last question for you. If you could work on any kind of project, or what would your dream project be? Whether it's an album, whether it be a film that you would score, like if it was a film, what kind of film would it be?
I've always dreamed of being involved in the films, or excuse me, I've always dreamed of scoring the music for a video game. So I don't know
Ooh.
when or what kind of game. I don't know if I have such specific things in mind.
Yeah.
But I always feel like some of the most famous video game music
Mhm.
has Latin and Caribbean roots.
Yeah.
Like Mario, if you listen to a lot of the music, there's so much that adheres to things you would hear in Latin America. Like I don't know if that was I don't know how intentional that was, but when I hear it, I'm like, that sounds like calypso. That sounds like Caribbean music. That sounds Cuban.
Mhm.
And I would love to be a part of a project that kind of brings music back to that same space, to that like Caribbean melting pot, I guess.
That'd be really, really
So
cool.
that'd be my dream. My dream project would be to be involved in a video game that needs music like that.
That would be awesome. I feel like people don't. Well, I feel like there's a lot of people who don't play video games. They probably don't realize how cinematic and how much influence video games take from the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love, I'm in the middle of a game and then all of a sudden there's a cutscene. I'm like, oh, cool. I get to chill and just watch something for 5 minutes. And then,
Oh yeah,
and
these
then
days,
boom, you get back into it. I know it's not just a video game experience anymore. It is a medium for entertainment.
yeah, totally. And the video games at this level, the production of them feels like you're watching cinema. Like a lot of times, they're even using the motion capture to make it have real actors being then re-represented
Mhm.
in the computer by these virtual
Yeah.
avatars. Like it's pretty wild.
Mhm.
But I think too that there's like this unique, the interactive element of the video game allows for immersion. So
Mhm.
anyway, I'm a huge fan of video games, and ever since I was a kid, I thought I grew up playing a bunch of video games. Grew up on Nintendo and
Mhm.
Sega and Super Nintendo, and I just always thought I like music, and if there's a way I can make music and I like video games and make those two things come together, I'll have a dream job.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing music full time, but the dream never dies. I
Yeah.
still want to do video games.
It could happen.
It can happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Diego, for coming on to the show. I forgot to mention at the top of the episode, you also did the music for this podcast.
I did do the music for this
which is
podcast.
funny, not intentionally. I just asked you if you had some music that you had, and you're like, "Oh yeah, here this track," and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect."
Oh.
So you're officially the composer for the music on this podcast,
That's right,
which I
that's right.
am saying at the end of every episode. But where can people find you?
They can find Making Movies at makingmoviesband.com, and on all of our social media at MKNGMVS. So that's Making Movies without the vowels, just at MKNGMVS.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just say what's up anytime. I'm pretty much on all the platforms, so
yeah,
hit me up.
Sweet. All right. Well, thank you again. And thanks to all of our listeners. Remember, go out there.